Hey everyone, welcome back to Chess on Ice and to another edition of our Curling Opening Book series. Today we're going to expand on the Hammer team's first shot options by looking at what you can do with the hammer when the opposing team, the team without hammer, decides to throw top four or something similar on their first shot. If you need a refresher on that, you can go back to our video on the top four shot, but basically, when the non-hammer team does this, they're signaling they want to play a clean end. They may be doing this because they're winning. They may be doing it just because they're a hitting team and it's close and early, and that's the strategy they want to play against you. Either way, you have two basic options here, one conservative and one aggressive. The first and most obvious option is also the more conservative of the two options, in which you can actually just hit that rock. When you play this hit, you're really signaling that you don't want many rocks in play either. You might also be comfortable playing a very open and very safe end where a blank is possible for you. You may simply not want to take any chances, not want to risk giving up a steal by letting the non-hammer team build up a big center. Or you may just feel that your team is the better hitting team. Maybe they threw their rock into the top four by accident when they were trying to throw a guard, and so you're hitting to keep things clean. Ideally, when you hit, given that you have the hammer, you'd love to roll out to the side, but even hitting and staying in the middle is a fairly conservative result that's unlikely to lead to a lot of scoring. Obviously, this is the play you're going to want to make when you have a big lead. But there are some reasons to do this even when the game is close or early, or if your team just doesn't feel that confident in playing a more complicated end. Ironically, sometimes this is even a good play for teams that don't hit well. And I'll show that why that is when we get into the other option for the hammer team here. For many teams, this may become your default option. In the empty house scenario, I said that throwing into the house was extremely conservative and putting up a corner guard was really the standard play. It's a little closer here between the two main options, but I would say that this is probably a little closer to the standard play for most teams, with the obvious caveat that once you fall behind, this should not be the standard play. The benefits to this, well, it keeps your future shots simple. You're at no real risk. You could still build up an end if the non-hammer team makes a mistake, but unless you make a couple errors, it's going to be very hard for them to build a steal. So that's option one. Let's take a quick look at the other option on the table for you. So the non-hammer team has thrown its top four rock, and you don't want to hit. You want to set up an end instead. You want to take some risk and try to score big, setting up an end where you can get two or more. Or potentially, you're really, really uncomfortable having your lead hit. That can happen on very casual nights or with very new curlers where it's not just that they're not good at hitting, you really don't think they can throw the weight to remove a rock, or they really, really hate throwing hits. In that case, the other option is to throw up a corner guard. This guard signals that you want to play an aggressive end and that you're willing to take chances to score points. As we've talked about so many times in other videos, you need guards to consistently score two or more points in an end. That's because you need places where you can hide and the opposing team can't just remove them with no difficulty. However, unlike most of the earlier scenarios we've looked at in this series, talking about the non-hammer team's first rocks or the empty house situation, we're finally getting to the point where throwing that guard now comes with some real risk. You are allowing the non-hammer team a chance to guard their top four rock, which means you'll have to get rid of it later. And it won't be super easy to do so, especially because you can't peel their guard on your second stone. you're going to have some work to do to get rid of shot rock here. And for now, you've pretty much committed to going around your corner guard. Or in some really desperate situations where you're down, say, 3 in a final end, or more than that with just a few ends to go, maybe throwing a second corner guard and taking even more risk. This is why I said that counterintuitively, if your team just isn't good at hitting, you may not want to throw the corner guard, even though it leads to a drawish game. The reasoning behind that is, at some point, you are going to have to throw hits most likely to deal with the center that the non-hammer team is building. That said, if you're losing, this is still the way to go. You're going to have to take some risks, and that means you're going to have to throw the corner guard and just try to deal with the center of the ice later. This gives you an opportunity to bury one or more behind that corner guard. It's especially true in club play, where skips almost never peel that corner guard, at least not until it's way too late, that you could bury multiple rocks behind there, and then if you're able to deal with the center, you could be set up for a big end. This setup, where the non-hammer team has thrown a top 4 rock and the hammer team responds with a corner guard, lead to some of the most dynamic situations in curling, where there's a real tension and a real fight between the non-hammer team looking to hold on to their center and the hammer team threatening on the corner and then looking to break down that middle to score a big end. Now, while I think those are the 2 recommended shots in this situation, I want to show one more possibility that you'll sometimes see people throw, just to explain why I don't think it's such a great idea. That option is not throwing a corner guard, but throwing a rock into the corner of the house. For some skips and some players, this feels really comfortable because you're now throwing a rock in, you're threatening to score immediately, and it feels like you're really doing something, whereas the corner guard may feel like you haven't accomplished anything quite yet. This is sort of a viable option in the scenario where you already have a big lead and you really, really don't want your lead to throw hits, either because of their own discomfort, their physical inability to throw hit weight, or a similar reason. Again, I will emphasize that with that big lead, even if your lead makes, say, a quarter of their hits, it's probably better. You're probably better off just hitting that rock in the top 4. But in a case where you truly don't think that's an option, maybe you throw this rock because you know the non-hammer team really can't afford to hit it themselves. However, that's really the problem in a general situation with throwing this rock, that the non-hammer team can hit it right away. And when they do that, when they throw this hit, they're now sitting 2, and you're already in a position where you're likely to get forced. Yeah, you may find a double somewhere down the line, but more likely than not, it's going to be hard for you to score more than 1 point unless the other team makes some significant errors during the end. If your lead or your second make a mistake themselves, you could suddenly find yourself facing a lot of rocks. And even in a situation where the non-hammer team was ahead and normally wouldn't throw up guards, they may be in such a comfortable position that they now guard their 4-foot rock, putting you under a lot of pressure in a situation where you're already looking like you need to score multiple points. So I generally wouldn't advise that call. Generally, I would stick to the other 2 main options, which are either hitting that yellow rock directly or throwing up a corner guard if you want to play more aggressively or you need to score multiple points. All right, that's about it when it comes to dealing with a top 4 rock when you're throwing your first shot with the hammer. There's one more situation to talk about when it comes to hammer options, and that's going to be dealing with the centerline guard thrown by the non-hammer team. That's the scenario where there are the most options, the most to think about, and really the most complicated of the early game scenarios. So we'll dive into that next time. For now, I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Curling Opening Book Series, And if you liked it, be sure to like the video, subscribe, think about supporting the Patreon. It's really been taking off. I have several patrons now. I'm really looking forward to what that additional revenue is going to mean for this channel going forward. So if you want to support the channel that way, check out the Patreon and pledge a little something to the channel in exchange for some exclusive content and other benefits. Until next time, hope you enjoyed the video and good curling.